How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, this is a great topic coming your way. I'm actually going to give the show over to Connie Alleyne, who is going to give us 5 tips for non-uniform staff. I do believe if you're custody, you should watch this video as well because non-uniform staff do interact with us in custody. So it'll be good for you to kind of see the advice that we're trying to give in order to make our environment just a bit smoother. Now, guys, before I bring Connie onto the show, I just want to tell you I got 3 sponsors. One is American Military University. If you guys are looking to seek higher education, get that degree, you guys should go to American Military University. It's a great online school. They're very, very supportive of what we do on Tier Talk, but also more importantly, they support what we do in the corrections profession. So please, guys, show support. Check out American Military University. We also have Guardian RFID. From inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence, Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. And we also have the wrap restraint. If you guys are unfamiliar with the wrap, there's going to be a link to a video of that in my description. Controlling combative subjects quickly in an upright position so they can breathe has never been more important. Documents such as Washington, departments, not documents, departments such as Washington, DOC, LA County, San Diego County, and hundreds of other facilities across the U.S. trust and believe in the wrap restraint. Again, that's WRAP. Go to saferestraints.com for contact information and mention Tier Talk to receive instructor training at no cost. Lower liability for your facility and your personnel with the wrap. Give the wrap a call today, 800-WRAP-911. And guys, by the way, if you guys are interested, I have a book on the market called Inmate Manipulation Decoded. There'll be a link to that in the description as well. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Connie Alleyne, and she is going to give us 5 tips for non-uniform staff. All right, Connie, the show is yours. But remember, Connie, before you take over, introduce yourself. I know you're nervous, so I'm just going to coach you through it. Introduce yourself. You got a great podcast. Let's talk about that for a few. Let's jump on the Civilian Training Academy. I believe you have a school that offers great training. So let's talk about that a little bit. And then if we have time, we'll go over the 5 tips. There's time. Hold on. I'm going to put you out. Hold on.
Oh, God. So, hi, everybody. I am Connie Alleyne. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. And tonight, Anthony's giving me the floor. So we're thankful for that. And we're going to kind of see where that goes. So Civilian Corrections Academy is pretty much where we have training for non-uniform staff. Everything from inmate manipulation to the introduction of contraband and really what makes you a target. There's all these wonderful things in training that, we try to touch on from a non-uniform staff perspective, right? Because typically we go through a traditional academy training, but that doesn't really teach us how to engage with the inmates, right? It really doesn't teach us, if I'm a nurse or if I'm a doctor, how do I put on that security cap, right? Like, because we're usually not law enforcement. We don't have law enforcement background. And so this environment is usually very challenging for us to kind of really get the hang of. And so it also teaches us just like a slew of things you need to know, which a couple of them I'll kind of throw out there in the 5 tips for non-uniform staff. I'm also the podcast host of the Fly Behind the Wall podcast, where really I was the fly behind the wall, right? I was a former administrator, really getting to see firsthand sort of the security side of things, plus the medical, mental health, dental side of things, the programming side of things, and how, so these relationships either can make or break the success of our teams. And so I'm just very passionate about the fact that we have non-uniform staff who come into corrections, and a lot of times they don't get the training that they need, but our environment is very unforgiving. And so because of that, when you slip up, you end up getting walked out. Are there some people who are just malicious? Absolutely. It is what it is, right? Like, those people get walked out. They should be. But there are times where people, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that. I didn't know that was part of the rules. Like, it's that kind of stuff that we want to prevent from happening, which is why I do the fly behind the wall and why I created the academy. So I'm also the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon, literally using corrections as the backdrop to my story, because a lot of my growing, I started on Rikers in 2000. It is 2022 and I'm still in corrections, dealing with corrections, doing all the work. Although I'm not in facility now, I spent 16 years in facility, and now I'm doing training. Who knows if I'm going back in, but wherever that takes me, wherever the business takes me is where we're going to go. So without any further ado, we are going to jump into our tips, because quite frankly, we are seeing that there's a lot of new blood coming into facilities. And if we could take any of our learning and apply it, or at least share it to some of the new folks, it would be to their benefit. And so the first tip I got is just to be respectful, right? A lot of times I have had the experience of, someone coming through the front gate and officer saying, "Hey, I have to check your bag," and people giving officer all kind of grief. "I'm a doctor. You don't need to check my bag. It's like, no. We want to make sure that we walk in that door. First impressions are lasting impressions. And that impression you make right out the gate is really one of those that people will never forget. Whether you're a doctor, whether you're a nurse, it really doesn't even matter. Titles, credentials aside, being respectful and being professional at all times is a requirement. You give respect, you get respect. You speak to people the way you want to be spoken to, and you don't have you don't have situations that present themselves to you that could be avoided if you had only asked in a respectful way, right? If you had only approached the officer in a way that was respectful. And even some of those who sort of misunderstand their role and sort of engage with the inmates in a disrespectful way, right? Like that gets you caught up too. And so just be mindful that you step into this space, you need to be respectful. This is not to say that you don't advocate for yourself. This is not to say that you don't stand up for yourself. There is a way to do that and still be professional. So tip number 2, really important, is to learn the chain of command, right? Most of us don't have that military background. So the chain of command may be something new for us. Like we know that it exists, right? But stepping into corrections, it is a paramilitary environment. And so the chain of command is really important. Understanding the difference between a lieutenant, a captain, a major, a deputy warden, a warden, like all of that matters. In every system, they have different tiers. But you want to make sure that as you step in and you start learning the chain of command, that you are going to the right person to address your issue, right? Like, I don't think you should be talking to the warden about something happening in a housing unit that you haven't brought to the attention of the officer in the housing unit. All too often we make the mistake. "Oh, I happen to be in a meeting with the warden." Yeah, but that's still not the right way to address something, right? Like, officer in the unit should be given first opportunity to make any adjustments or changes in his or her unit, right? And then if that doesn't work out, you go to the next person in that chain of command. It certainly isn't the warden. And I'm only using that as an example, right? So understanding that chain of command, understanding that you may ask someone for something and maybe it's not within their scope. And so you might not have gotten what you asked for because that's not the right person to handle it. So as you learn the chain of command, you also learn what are their roles. What does everyone do? Right. And there's a greater respect that you can gain for that person because you do understand what they do. Right. And you've taken the time to learn what they do. And if you're not clear about what they do, it's okay to ask a question, because how else would you build your network? How else will you build that working relationship that allows someone to get to know you? You get to know them. And then when an incident arises, right, like, okay, I know this person. Like, we could speak on a certain level and we have an understanding. They know who I am. I know who they are. The third one I would say is understanding your role in the bigger picture. Many times we come in just laser focused, right? I'm a nurse, whether you're a specialty nurse or you do general nursing, you walk in, this is what I do, right? If you're the doctor, this is what I do, whether you have a specialty or not, right? Psychiatry, mental health, whatever that is, so what does that mean in the grand scope of things, right? How does that fit into the bigger picture of facility operations, right? So you might be the medical provider and you think, oh, I run my clinic. I see the inmates who come through the clinic, but then you get a call from the housing unit to say someone's in distress, right? There was a code call. In some states, some facilities, the doctor is a part of that code response team. In some facilities, they're not. So depending on your role, you need to understand, like, where do I fit in here? But also too, right? Like, so the bigger picture is, as we are evolving into this space of rehabilitation, right? As a service provider, a medical or mental health provider, the bigger picture is you're stabilizing these inmates before they're going out into the community. And what does that do, right? We think about our role in public safety, right? It's not so much, oh, we want to make sure things are pretty quiet in the facility. Yeah, we want it to be quiet and we want easygoing days, but stable inmates are also inmates who transition much more successfully, as well as inmates who don't recidivate, right? Now, are there other reasons why inmates recidivate? Absolutely. So, that's not what this particular video is about. But it is understanding that your role isn't just your role in facility, right? Like whatever or however we engage with this population has an impact on how they transition once they get back into the streets, right? And while they're in the facility, our follow through, our ability to keep them stable helps us all to have easier days. Not just you as the service provider, not just your social worker who has to go and implement treatment plans, but also the housing units. We keep inmates safe and we keep officers safe and we keep ourselves safe by keeping these inmates stable. So, number 3, learning the rules. Now, I think this is like a really huge one for me, particularly because as service providers, as non-uniform staff, we typically are not employees of DOC, right? We usually are a third-party vendor employee. And so many times our vendor has their own policies, procedures, rules that we have to follow and remain compliant with. However, you can't step into a facility and not understand the rules in that facility and not understand any administrative directives, any memorandums, anything that internally provides guidance in the facility. It's the way the officer, the custody staff, they operate, right? And so if they have an expectation of you and they ask you something and you're sort of pushing back on that ask, but you think they have no right asking you that, but you don't know the rules, like you create a situation internally that could be avoided. And it's not just the avoidance of creating a situation, right? It's also, I know the rules, so I know how I'm expected to conduct myself in this environment. And a lot of times it is, oh, this is what you would have done in the community. That might not be appropriate here, right? I'm just thinking of someone who gave an inmate a cough drop, right? In the community, someone's not feeling well or someone's coughing. We wouldn't think twice necessarily about giving an inmate a cough drop. But now we've got the inmate choking in the hallway on the cough drop you just gave them that wasn't prescribed, right? It's not a medication and it's from your personal stash. So why would you be giving an inmate anything personal? Here's all these questions that come by something so simple. So learn the rules, make sure that you understand how the facility is being governed and operated. And then also you have to learn the rules of your vendor. And last but not least, it is just please ask questions. Make sure that you are clear on what the expectations are. A lot of times you might sit in a meeting and you just don't understand you don't understand the context. Maybe because you might be new, you don't have the context to the conversation. So you kind of walk out confused. It's okay to ask for clarification. It's okay to make sure you're on the same page. If you don't ask questions, you are never going to know, right? There are always opportunities to get the clarification you need so that you don't make the mistakes. Now, granted, we talk about, different cultures, facility cultures that have, they can be sort of a learning environment, right? Where you can make mistakes, but you can cross correct, right? Like you can go back and say, oh, I didn't realize I was supposed to do this, but this is what I did. And then they have some facilities where you can't make those mistakes. So it really matters that if you were giving a directive, you have exactly the information you need to carry out the directive in the way you would have been expected to carry out that directive. I think the other part about asking questions is that it shows that you are actively engaged mentally in this environment, right? Like, because if you're not critically thinking, you may not know that these two things are related when they are, right? But you might not know how they fit together. And so part of that bigger picture, right? Understanding the work you do and how it may impact the broader facility operations, it is asking questions. So here we go. Your 5 tips for tonight. Respect, respect, respect. I want to make sure that we are clear that respect is paramount. The second one is the chain of command. Learn the chain of command, respect the chain of command, ask questions if you're not clear on that chain of command, and don't hesitate to go to someone in that chain of command if you need support or you need guidance. The next thing is understanding that bigger picture. When you understand the bigger picture, it almost reinforces your purpose. So this is why I do this. I do this, and this is the impact that my actions has on facility operations. This is the impact my actions have on this population that we serve, right? If you don't understand the bigger picture, sometimes you go into work and you're kind of on autopilot and you just don't understand why I'm doing certain things until you don't do it. And then something falls apart, right? Something in that process breaks and you become the reason why it's broken, right? So understanding the why you do things and that bigger picture is really important. And tip number 4 is learning the rules. I think the rules are the things that sometimes we kind of bypass, right? Because we may be shadowing somebody and they say, oh, we do this because of X, Y, or Z. But there's so much more detail behind that X, Y, or Z. And so learning those rules would be very important because you want to know exactly what the expectations are, because only you're going to be held accountable to those expectations. The person you shadowed is not going to be held accountable to those expectations. And tip number 5 is ask questions for clarification. That is for non-uniform staff and for uniform staff. Many of us step into these roles. You transfer to a new facility. You just got a promotion, whatever is going on. We don't know everything in this environment. And every day we're presented with new and different situations. And it's not until we start asking questions that we get to the root of what we should be doing, what would be appropriate, and how do we make sure that we're sort of mitigating the liability, right? Because if we're out there doing all kind of things just because I think that's what I'm supposed to do, as opposed to knowing what you're supposed to do, we open up ourselves as well as the institution to such significant liability, and a liability that, could have been avoided. So that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so very much for listening, for tuning in. I mean, Tier Talk is here as a resource for all of us, right? Non-uniformed and uniformed staff. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, hit that bell so you can get notifications, and please stay safe.